Hi, this is Anna, and this is Check It at the Round Table, where we discuss movies, books, music, and stuff. Today, we are discussing the Last Twilight series directed by the brilliant Piaf of Bad Buddy, 1000 Stars, Moonlight Chicken, and now Last Twilight. I'm sure he's done other many fabulous things, but those are the only ones I know of at the moment that come immediately to mind. Also, this show stars Jimmy and C, the very, very good Thai actors who have done Vice Versa and played the horrible character in Bad Buddy way. I'm just saying, but it just goes to show Jimmy can pull off any kind of part. So anyway, but Last Twilight, episode 1 through episode 11 has aired as of last Friday. We are getting ready for episode 12 this coming week. I am so excited. I'm like, yay. But anyway, so what have I thought about the series? Okay, this series, just to clarify for those who are listening, this is not a show for the kiddies. There are some very hard things in it. There's some language in it. There's some romantical behavior in it that you probably don't want the kiddies to watch. However, this is still one of my favorite BL dramas from Thailand I have ever seen. I'm really looking forward to seeing how it ends. So this is the story of Day, a famous badminton player from Thailand who goes blind because of an accident that damaged his corneas when he was trying to drive his drunk brother home late one night. They got hit by another car, an oncoming vehicle, and Day slowly went blind. He went completely blind when he was playing badminton. His sight just went almost to zero. I think he has a little bit of eyesight, but very, very minimal, like one palm distance, as they say. But anyway, so you have Day. He's been blind for over a year. His mother is a famous chef in Thailand. His brother is another college student. They're like about a year apart. I think his brother, Nai, is like 1 year older. Their family is extremely dysfunctional. I think that's one of the highlights of this movie. I think one of the interesting things about Piaf is he did Bad Buddy, and now he's doing Last Twilight, and both of them are about how to navigate very complicated relationship issues that arise. So as the story progresses, and this is going to have spoiler alerts in it, I'm just going to be completely honest. I'm not going to surprise you. I'm like, what surprises, this is not the podcast for you. But the reason that they have dysfunction is Day and Night's mom and dad lived in Songkhla, which is a beautiful place in Thailand. I was Googling. I was like, wow, that's gorgeous. It's on my bucket list for someday. But Songkhla is a small seaside town. When Day and Night were very small, it would have been when Night was about 4 years old, I'm guessing. Day was 3 years old. Their dad ran off with another woman. And he not only ran off with another woman, but he completely disregarded his family. His Day's mom had to beg for food to keep them alive. And one day she packed up and went to Bangkok and said, I am going to make it. And she became a very successful chef and is able to provide very well financially for Day and Night. Now, Day and Night, I'm guessing at the time of this story, Day is probably about 20 years old. Night is about 21. As the story progresses, Day would be about 22, Night about 23. That's the only problem I really have with the show is two things. One, the mother in this show is positively horrid. I don't mean that bad at all, but Day's mother really has no redeeming qualities. I mean, I feel bad for her because she had to beg for food for her and her children. That is a terrible situation for anyone to ever be in. So she does have my empathy for having to go through such a terribly hard time with her family. But she does not have my empathy because she really is non-existent in the lives of her children. She provides very well. They have a beautiful house. They lack nothing financially, but she's never home. I mean, she's always away. And Knight, as the oldest, is trying to deal with that and the fact that he's supposed to be strong. And also the fact that because he was drunk one night, his brother is now blind, which Day is not very nice about and constantly reminds him that it's his fault. I'm like, that is not good of Day. But I will also say neither one of them have had any kind of good example for how to deal with bad things that happen. So Day and Knight live in this beautiful big palatial mansion in Bangkok, I think, and their mom is never home. So Day has all the medical care he needs, but he never has anyone around except Knight, and he and Knight do not get along at all. So Day's mom, when Day accidentally hurts his foot so bad that he has to go to a wheelchair because he can't see to walk around the house, and she decides that he needs to have a caregiver or caretaker. So she lines up all these meetings with all these caregivers. It's disastrous. I mean, no offense, I'm going, you know, Day has a really bad attitude at the beginning of the show. I mean, you really don't want to like Day at all. And which is so funny because I'm like, Talay in Vice Versa, who was also played by C, was such a likable character, except that he could be a little naggy. I will be completely honest, he could be naggy. But I'm like, Day in Twilight, you really don't want to like at all when you first meet him. You're going, he's a rich, spoiled brat. I mean, no offense at all, but that's what we would call him in the States. Like, you know, he doesn't really have any redeeming qualities that come to mind. You do feel bad because you're like, you know, he's blind. That's a downer. But he still has a really bad attitude about things. But you don't know the rest of his story. And you also don't know that he can, when he decides to, be a really nice human being. So anyway, you have Day trying to deal with the caregivers. And then we have Mock. Well, at the same time, literally, that Day was going blind, Mock was having a really terrible time. Now, this is another part. Okay, there are 3 parts of this show that I do not like of the series. 1, the mother is terrible. 2, the adult children are treated like they're juveniles, which aggravates the snot out of me. But that's in episode 11. And number 3, I really wish we didn't have the fight scene at the beginning with Mock breaking off the glass bottle and attacking people. I'm like, that really is not okay behavior. I'm like, no offense. I'm like, I'm really easygoing about life, but I'm like, you do not attack people. And you certainly don't attack people with a broken beer bottle. That is just not the way to handle any situation. There is always another, more peaceful, zenful way we can approach problems. But anyway, we have Mock, who is working at a garage. Mock is about probably 22 years old, I am guessing, when this story opens. 21, 22. So again, we're dealing with a person who is an adult, but they are a very young adult, and they are not handling things in the best of ways. Now, to give this a little bit of a backstory, Mock is in technical college. His sister Reng is open to her nail shop, but it is bellying up. He's trying to figure out how to survive with the fact that his sister's business has capsized. They just got a new house that is very, very nice for them. And it's not a good time for Mock. But anyway, one of Mock's friends who is there at the garage with him, they are betting on like this kind of sport game. I don't know the game. I'm like, I don't know, some kind of gambling. So anyway, they're betting on that. As they're betting on that, these guys from outside come in because one of Mock's acquaintances is messing with that guy's girlfriend. I don't know why you would do this to some guy I don't know why you do this anyway, but I'm going, the guys who come in are really big guys. I'm going, why would you mess with their girlfriends? I mean, if you shouldn't mess with anyone's girlfriends. So I'm like, you pick these, we would call them big bruisers, that you're going to go mess with their girlfriend. I'm like, I don't know. So anyway, so I guess this one girl was in relationship with this one guy and this other guy at the same time. And ergo, they decide to have a big knockdown, drag out fight. Well, in that process, Mock ends up beating people up. He gets beaten up. I will say a lot of people get beaten up in that scene. So he ends up in jail. He actually ends up in jail for over a year and ends up being released with an ankle brace because of that fight. And the fact that one of the people in that fight was influential enough to get him locked up for a year, although the other people were apparently not locked up for a year. The same night that Mock gets in the fight, his sister, unbeknownst to him, commits suicide because she is so despairing about losing the nail business and not knowing how to handle life. So she ends her life. So even though I feel that Mock really was totally out of line in the fight scene, I still cannot help but sit there and go, oh my God, not only are you jailed, I'm sorry, not trying to cuss, but not only are you jailed for a year for a fight that nobody else seems to be jailed for a year for, although I will say he shouldn't have done what he did, and he did need to take care of that and make amends, but I'm going, it should be evenly distributed among everyone that caused the trouble, especially the two men who were fighting over the girlfriend. I'm going, why don't we handle it? And also I'm going, the other thing that I did not think was very fair and equitable about that scene is I'm like, they're all fighting, and Mock is not a big person. I mean, no offense, I'm like, he's like the scrapper of the entire fighting group, and they're all on him, like beating him up. And I'm like, why didn't we put any of the other people that were fighting too, that are way bigger and beating him up way worse than he beat them up, in jail for a year? But anyway, I'm just saying fairness matters to Anna. So I'm like, I totally get he might have needed your jail time, but I'm like, those bozos also needed your jail time too. I'm like, yeah, okay. But anyway, so Mock not only has to deal with being in jail for a year, but he also has to deal with the fact that his sister is dead the same night that he got jailed. His ex-girlfriend comes to the jail to talk to him, and he's like, where's my sister? And she is totally beside herself because she is the one who found his sister. So you have all that issue. Well, fast forward a year. Mock is out of jail trying to get a job, but he has the ankle brace. And so no one will hire him because they think he is going to, go AWOL on them. And, I don't blame people for having doubts, but it's like, I don't mean it where I'm like, I used to work with kids back in the States sometimes. I'm like, some of the kids, they get in trouble sometimes. And I would sit there and they'd be going, they did X a few years ago. I'm like, yeah, they did X a few years ago. That doesn't mean they're going to repeat X. And I think sitting there thinking that just because someone might have done something a few years ago does not mean that they are going to keep repeating that action, and does not mean that we should sit there and wait for problems to rise. I'm going, I remember being a teenager. I'm like, being a teenager is not easy. Everyone thinks that like when you're an adult, you somehow become all-knowing and never make mistakes. I'm going, if there's one thing I've learned about being an adult, I'm like, you do make better decisions than when you were a teenager because you are mentally more in your skin. I mean, that's just the whole thing about your brain fully develops by the time you're 22 to 24. I'm like, I don't know if that's it, but I'm like, I still sit there and go, the only thing that's really changed is your brain works a little better, maybe for some of us. And also you sit there and the things that you used to just totally stress out about when you were a teenager don't really bother you anymore. But you still have these issues you got to deal with. And you still look at life and go, because I went through this when I was younger, I will not go through this again now. But experience, it's a wonder. So anyway, Mock is trying to get a job, but no one will hire him. And he goes back to a place that would supposedly hire him, but they decide not to, especially when they see the ankle brace. But what I think is interesting is they juxtapose Mock's ankle brace with the fact that Day is being judged because he's blind, and people look at him weird in a similar way to the way they look at Mock-ward. Now, there is far more judgment with Mock and how people look at him than there is with Day and how people look at him. But still, that juxtaposition, I really, because I'm like, we all have things that people judge us for. They might judge us because of how that we look. They might judge us because of past experiences. They might judge us for, I don't know, they're having a bad day and put that on you. I mean, no offense, I'm like, people judge for the weirdest of reasons. But I love how Piaf, I mean, I don't know where I'm going. Someday it would be so cool to meet him because I'm like, not because I'm like, oh, he's the director of such and such and such and such. But I'm going, I love the way that he sees the world and how he presents that in his films, from Bad Buddy to 1000 Stars to even some parts of Moonlight Chicken, although I did not like Moonlight Chicken because I'm not into hookup relationships, and that was way too hookup-y for me. But anyway, I'm like, you know, to each their own, but that's just not my thing. But the thing that I really love is how he can take something that seems so complex and complicated, these balls of wool, and just make it so simple for the viewer to see. So anyway, Mock is trying to find a job. He finally gets a job through his ex-girlfriend, who he is friends with still, the one who came to the jail and found his sister dead. And they are really good friends, although they are completely non-romantic at this point. She's with an absolute bozo. But anyway, so she finds him a job cleaning air filters for a company. So he's in a business cleaning air filters, and he sees all these people lining up to be caretakers. And he's like, I could do that job. I could take care of somebody. I can do that. It would be an easy job, way easier than I'm trying to find jobs now. No one's hiring me, but maybe I could get that job. So he goes in to try to get the caretaker job. All these people have failed. And he goes in, he's like, I would like to apply for that job. He is in the scrubs for cleaning air conditioners. And the people are like, you know, there's no more application time. We're too busy. And he's like, I am here today. You can interview me today. And I mean, no offense, I'm like, he has a very abrasive personality, but he's like, I would like to be interviewed today. I'm here. I am waiting. I can do this job. Well, what he doesn't know is Day is there. And Day's like, tell him that you want someone to basically feed and take care of a blind kid. And he's looking at him going, you know, I knew this was a caretaking job, but I'm not here to take care of a brat. Have a nice day. And that's how he and Day meet. I'm like, you know, it's like Jane Austen said, romance, the very essence of love is in civility for some people in Pride and Prejudice. I can't help thinking about that with Day and Mock when they first meet. So anyway, but at the end of the day, Mock ends up finding Day in an elevator at another situation. And Day loses his library card. He goes into the library trying to find CDs. He ends up dropping stuff, getting very stressed out. Mock just kind of stands there and watches him, even though he and Day do not like each other, even though Day doesn't even know that Mock is there. But Mock is like, I'm going to watch this person because they're blind. Somebody could bother them. And he's like, I'm not going to interfere, but I'm just going to just kind of keep an eye on things. But at the end of the day, he does that. He also, there's one point when Day and Night are in Day's car. They get into a big fight because it's Day's car, but Night's driving it, which makes Day feel that Night's taking everything that was his. It's a mess. Day actually gets out of the vehicle, goes out into the traffic. Night doesn't know what to do because it's just a really bad situation. And so at the end of the day, Mock is on the side of the street again, totally unplanned, and pulls Day out of the road and goes, you're okay? You're all right? Go back to your car, and gets him so he's not going to get hit by the cars. So at the end of the day, Mock goes to Day's house with the library card, and he's like, I have your library card because I found it. I wanted to give it back. And Mock and Day and his mom are there at the house, and everyone's like, well, you can leave it on the table. And Mock's like, no, Day can come and get his own library card from me. He's like, Day, you're on the sofa. Walk across the room and grab the library card. And I'm going, it seems very mundane, but he is the first person in Day's life for literally over a year, probably a year and a half, that has treated Day like he's a human being capable of doing things on his own. Even if he's kind of cranky about saying, like, you're totally able to do this. Come grab your frickin' library card out of my hand. And so Day comes and walks across and grabs the library card. And Mock's like, I will do the caretaker job. I can do this job. And Day's mom is like, I really don't know if we want this kind of cranky kid in our house, but he's the only one that has agreed to be caretaker. And he's the only one that, even though Day doesn't really like, isn't like vehemently opposing. And she's busy with her work and she's like, okay, I will let this happen. But then she finds out that Mock had been in jail. And before that, she was talking to Knight, Day's brother, and she's like, I really don't know about having this guy that we don't know in our house with Day, you know. And Knight's like, Mom, I live at the house too. I will kind of keep an eye on things. I don't think Mock's a bad person. He's just kind of abrasive in personality. But you know what? As long as he can handle, you know, we got to get somebody to take care of Day, and maybe we need an abrasive personality, basically. So Knight kind of keeps an eye on things. In the middle of the process, they find out that Mock wasn't in prison, and this really bothers Day's mom. And, you know, I do understand. I will say, I do understand if I had a kid and I were in Day's mom's shoes, I would be disturbed by the fact that the caregiver had been in prison. But I would also sit there and go, what is the context? What is this person doing now? And I'm also sitting there going, Day is not a child. I mean, I get that Day is his mom's child, but I will do a little bit more of a rant on that here on episode 11 in a bit. But the thing is Day is not a child. He is an adult. And so I'd be sitting there going, you know, if this person is not, if that was a one-off deal, if they are not going to be volatile and beating people up in general, then give them a chance to have a good life, to take care of the kid. I mean, or take care of the young adult, whatever you would call them. So I'm like, you know, I don't think that we should judge people for something that they maybe did once that was maybe a really bad thing, but that they're not going to repeat again because they figured out that's not the way to handle your acquaintance running out with someone else's girlfriend and having a fight. You can just sit there and go, fight it out yourselves. I don't need to handle this. I'm like, you know, getting in a fight for someone else's girlfriend? I'm like, it's not even your girlfriend. This ain't your battle. Go work on a car. I mean, I don't know, Anna, and relationships. Okay, this is why I'm single. But I'm like, some things are just not worth the battle, and that is one of them. But anyway, so they find out that Mock is been to prison, and Day's mom is upset about that. Mock's like, yes, I was in prison. I was in prison for fighting and assault, but that was then. And I am trying my very best, basically, to take care of Day well. And Day is like, you know, so he was in prison. That doesn't really pertain to me at this point in time. And he's the only person that has ever, since this happened, treated me like I'm not disabled or incapable. So they have that little battle. In the meantime, Day doesn't like having a caregiver. He fights Mock on everything. But in the middle of all that, Mock doesn't really have sense. He isn't nice back, but he also, even though Day is very, very difficult, Mock continues to try to do his job well. He gets Day slippers so that he doesn't keep hitting himself and end up back in the wheelchair because of the uncertainty of the walking paths. He helps Day figure out how to eat around other people without being nervous about it by basically giving him like test runs at home, and then they go out to a restaurant. And he, in the middle of that, he teases Day a little bit so that he knows that he doesn't have to take things so frickin' seriously. So I think because of that, because Mock is able to not necessarily be nice about things, because I'm like, Day can be a pill. So I'm like, Mock is sitting there going, you're a pill, but I'm still going to laugh about this. I'm going to put up with this, but I'm also going to let you know I'm not happy about this. And I think because of that, that is in a way why Mock and Day end up getting along and end up together at the end of the story. But in the middle of all that, Mock is trying to be a good caregiver. He helps Day get reconnected with his badminton friends. He also helps Day deal with closure regarding his badminton partner, who Day also had a crush on. That goes terribly wrong because August is just a confused, mean human. I mean, no offense, I'm like, the whole August thing, that was like, it was just painful to watch because August was just a mess. But anyway, Day had a badminton partner who was named August. August and him played together. They also fought because August was even more temperamental than Day. And at the end of the day, not to play on the word Day, Day realizes that he did have a crush on August, which he didn't realize before. I don't know. I'm like, sometimes, people just have that hit them. But Day and August had a rift because Day just cut complete contact. When he went blind, he did not go to college. He did not go to badminton. His friends did not know what happened. His brother told everyone that Day had gone abroad. It was a very difficult thing. And Day's mother basically had Day live in isolation because she didn't want to try to push him to go out. And that's just how it went. Well, Mock ends up deciding that he's going to help Day kind of go outside more, actually go and maybe make acquaintances with his badminton friends again, like G, or with August. Now with August, that goes terribly wrong. But even in that going wrong, I'm going, Day got closure. It's like, I was thinking, I was going, breakups and that kind of thing are never easy to deal with, or telling people you care about them and having that not work out. That's never easy to deal with. But I'm going, at least if that happens, people have closure. They can move on with their lives. They can be at peace more. And even with the thing with August, because what happens is August and him get reacquainted. August decides that he's going to be basically Day's running guide for like this blind run that they have in Bangkok. And in the middle of that, Day has a birthday, and Mock helps plan a birthday party with August to kind of get Day there, and they have a festive time. Well, at the end of the birthday party, August has this romantic moment, kisses Day. Day kisses August back, and August pushes him away and says, "Stop doing that." And Day, understandably, is extremely confused, and Mock is standing there because Mock left to give August and Day a moment because he thought they were maybe going to be a couple. When he comes back, and Mock is feeling bad because Mock kind of likes Day, as weird as that may be, because I'm like, Day doesn't really have a lot of redeeming qualities, but Mock kind of likes him. But when he comes back, he sees that August is pushing Day away and leaving him in this kind of weird situation. And Mock is understanding. I'm like, that is one time I'm like, I do understand Mock being upset. Now, I do think that he should not have grabbed August and said, "What in the heck are you doing?" But he's like, "What are you doing today?" And he's like, "Well, I wanted him to have a good night and a good memory." And Mock is sitting there going, "You think it is a good memory to kiss someone, to tell them you care about them, and then when they kiss you back, to push them away?" He's like, "What in the heck are you thinking, August?" And Day is like, let August go. Leave him be. It's okay, Mock. Well, at the end of the day, Mock gets Day out of the birthday situation because he's like, this is and I do have to say, I'm right there with Mock on that whole situation because I'm like, I don't really like Day as a character very much because he doesn't have a lot of redeeming qualities, even by the end of the story. But I'm like, or the end of episode 11. But I'm like, I do understand because I'm like, you tell someone you care about them and then you push them away and treat them that way. I'm like, that is so so not right on so many levels. So I'm like, figure out your life, figure out what you want. And, then I'm going, sometimes you still have a situation where you're in a relationship and it doesn't work out. But I'm like, at least know where you stand before you go trying to be with somebody else. But anyway, so Mark takes Day and gets him out of that situation. And it's really early in the morning. So he takes him up to a parking garage where there's a nice sunrise. He's like, Day, this is where I used to come to sleep things off when I got too much to drink once to avoid getting pulled over by the police. But he's like, it's a really nice view. There's a nice sunrise. It's a good day. Because he's like, Day had his birthday. I think he was 21 or 22. And he's like, this is not a great way to have your birthday. So he's like, I'm trying to make the day better for Day. So, and Day's standing there. He's like, is there anybody in the world who isn't pitying me or treating me weird because I'm blind? And Mark is like, okay, I'm just going to go for it. And this is something that I'm like, there have been a few people on YouTube putting up comments saying, Day and Mock shouldn't be together because Mock is Day's caregiver. And I'm going to do a bit on that later on here. And I'm like, I do understand where they're coming from, but I'm going, this is a nuanced issue. So anyway, Mock decides to go for it and he kisses Day. And Day is kind of confused here. And he's like, are you pitying me too? And Mock is like, I'm not pitying you. And so they go back home. The next day, Day is talking to G, and he's like, Mock kissed me, and Mock likes me, and she's like, are you sure? And he's like, I'm pretty sure about this, G. And she's like, oh, well, Mock is a nice person. He's a bit rough and tumble, but he's nice. He's just kind of prickly on the outside, but he's good looking. He's nice. He cares about you. He's very good at taking care of you. I mean, there's worse people you can live with. And Day is like, but he's not my type, G. He's not my type. And G's like, well, if he's not your type, then you need to tell him that you don't feel about him that way so that you don't hurt his feelings, because it's not right to lead people on if you're not going to be with them. And he's like, okay. So he goes with Mock to the car, and they're getting ready to leave. And he's like, Mock, Day's like, Mock says, Day, they're both sitting there, and Day's like, I don't, you're not my type. And Mock's like, that's okay, Day. I figured it would be that way. And Day's like, well, why did you do that? And he's like, well, I really wanted to kiss you and I like you. And Day's like, but you knew that you probably weren't my type. And he's like, I did, but I wanted you to know where I stood on the situation. And Day's like, well, then you knew that I probably wouldn't reciprocate. So why did you just say, well, I wanted you to know what I was thinking and feeling. He's like, okay. And he's like, I will quit working and I will quit being your caretaker. And Day's going, okay. I don't want you to quit being my caretaker. I just don't feel romantically attached to you. I want someone who's warm and friendly, and you're not that way. And he's like, and Mark's like, well, I'm not a walking microwave. I'm going, that's a funny way to think about it. But anyway, and he's like, so you want me to be your caretaker and you're okay with that? And he's like, but if you hit on me, Mark, you are fired. And he's like, okay, I will not hit on you. And so he goes to buckle him to a seat, and he's like, what are you doing? He's going, I'm buckling you in like I always do. Is that okay with you, Day? Well, then they have basically this kind of funny situation where Mark kind of teases him a bit, because there's a point where Day gets a foot grab. So he's asking for help with his leg, and he's like, can I give you a massage on your leg? Or is that hitting on you? He's like, just take care of the issue. He's like, okay. And then August decides he cannot run with Day. And so Day decides to jump out of the race. And Mark is like, well, if you are truly okay with being around me, then it should be no problem for me to be a guide runner for you, Day. So anyway, they have this whole little tete-a-tete. And Night, Day's brother, is sitting there going, they're going to end up together. They're just having this bit of whatever, fuftara, where my brother figures out what his type is or isn't. I'm going, the whole type thing I have always wondered about. I'm like, we all have qualities that we would consider when we're thinking about who we maybe would end up with in the future. But I'm like, to sit there and go, I have a type, tall, dark, and handsome, or short, fair, and whatever. I'm like, what if your person you're supposed to be with isn't any of those things? What then? Oh, you have to jump over the type hurdle. I don't know. My brain. But anyway, so Day and Mock go do the race with one of Day's friends, who's also blind and dating a very nice lady who he gets engaged to at the end of the race. And during the race, Day overhears that Mock might be getting a job as a mechanic when he's done with a caretaking job. And this really stresses Day out. And Day acts totally off during the race. Well, in the middle of that, Mock stops when they're about 50 meters from the finish line. He's like, you know what, Day? I'm tired of this. Basically, I like you. I know you kind of like me. I know you're basically upset because of the technician thing. He doesn't say this, but you can tell that's what's going on. He's like, you know what? When we get to the end of this race, I'm going to ask you to be my boyfriend, and then we're just going to finish kind of catwalking around this problem. He's like, come on. So he goes to the finish line, and he's like standing there, and Day stops at the finish line, and Mark's like, oh God, we're having a drama. He's going to tell me no, whatever. But Day drops the guide rope thingy that they held to run, and he crosses the finish line. He's like, so you will be my boyfriend today? And he's like, we crossed the line. I'll be your boyfriend. And he's like, okay, I'm so happy. But at the same time, Day's friend gets engaged. They're going to have a wedding in Sankla. And Day loses the rest of his sight. He can see things are going black because he can't see the outline of Mock's face, and it really makes him panic. So he goes to the doctor, and they find out that his cornea is almost gone completely, much faster than they were thinking. And he will be blind completely within probably 6 months, is what the doctor suggests is the time frame. So they get that news. Day and Mock then become boyfriends at that race. Day's brother Knight knows. Mock's best friend knows as well. And Mock's best friend also is pregnant. She was with a man who she was going to marry, but Mock found that he was running out on her with another woman. He told his best friend what was going on. That man beat up Mock twice, and Mock had his friend come and live with him because he had a place for her where Rang had stayed before. So he's like, you can stay in Rang's room, just take as much time as you need. And then he finds out that she's pregnant. He's like, you know what? You just stay here, which a lot of people have a problem with. But I'm like, they dated when they were in like high school, but I'm like, they're just good friends. And she needs a place to stay. She's there, and she's kind of a connection for him back to his past with Rang, because they both really cared about Rang. I'm going, it works. And she knows about him and Day, because he sat there with her when the day that he went up to the parking garage and kissed Day, he sat there, he's like, he brought her back congee, and she's like pregnant out to here, and she's eating her congee, and he's like, I need to talk to you about something. And she's like, okay, this sounds very bad. What are you talking to me about? And he's like, I like Day. And she's like, thank goodness you're admitting it. I've known for months. Can we just move on here? You talk about him incessantly. She's like, I'm happy for you, Mock, but please do not go out over the top and tell him that you like him, because you are way too passionate when you come to people and tell them that. And he's going, oh God, I already did that. And she's like, you already told him? And he's like, oh, no, I didn't do that. And she's like, So anyway, Day's brother Knight and Mock's friend, I forgot her name, know about Day and Mock. Now, Mock's brother and Mock's best friend, I think, actually are going to end up together too, which I find interesting. But the other thing, I'm going to do a little segue here. Knight, I think, is an interesting character because, at the first, you kind of want to feel sorry for him, but then you find out that he is the reason that Day went blind. Now, I do have to say, he's not the reason in that it is not his fault that a car hit them, but it is his fault that they were out late at night and he was drunk and not being the person that he needed to be that put Day in that situation. But the thing I think is interesting about Knight is Knight kind of does a 180. He puts up with the fact that for over a year and a half, his brother has been blaming him and he's been blaming himself. He puts up with the fact that his mother is never home. And so he is having to deal with this situation basically on his own. I mean, financially, he doesn't have to deal with it, but the other stuff he's having to deal with, and he's also in college at the time, full time. So I'm like, this is not an easy life for Knight. But at the same time, Knight likes Day's best friend, who is pregnant with another guy's kid. And there is a scene here, I think it's in episode 11, where he's at the prenatal place with not Mock's friend, and he's like talking to the doctor. He's like, you better take care of that kid because that kid's going to be mine. I'm going, most people that are 22 to 23 years old would not be dating a woman who is carrying another guy's kid. It just wouldn't happen, at least in the US. I don't know about in Thailand, but I'm like, it would not probably happen very much in the US. And I'm like, the other thing I think is interesting about Knight is he knows what it's like to be one of those kids. I mean, yes, they live in a very big house. Yes, they don't lack any financial thing that they would want. But he remembers what it would be like to be 4 or 5 years old and have your dad run out and leave your mom with you and your brother all on your own. And so because of that, I think it's interesting to see how empathy plays forward and how, in a way, even though, I mean, no offense, it's like, I've always thought it's funny because people are like, well, isn't it so good that a guy would marry a woman that already has a kid? And I'm going, I think that guy's lucky. It's like Jason Momoa when he married Lisa Bonet and she had the 2 kids. He was like, I am so happy that I am here with them and the kids are awesome. And I'm like, people don't realize what a joy children are to have in a life. I'm like, yes, it might not be his biological kid, but it is a kid. And that kid is going to make their lives so much happier than it is in that house that is way too big and not enough fun people in it. I'm like, no offense, I'm going, their world is so much going to be better because they had Mock and Mock's friend and the baby, and it'll be much better life. But anyway, so that is my little segue on tonight and how his life will be better. But anyway, I think the girl's name is Porjai. I could be wrong. But anyway, so Mock and Day become boyfriends. Now, there has been a few comments I have seen on YouTube where people are like, Mock should never date Day because he was his caretaker. It just shouldn't have happened. If he was in another place, this would be illegal if he was a nurse. And I'm like, number one, Mark wasn't a nurse. I'm like, no offense. I'm like, number one, let's clarify. Mark was hired as a caretaker, but he is not a certified nurse. And so that is not the same thing. Number two, I'm going, I will say, logically speaking, if I had been in Mock's place, which I'm not, but I'm saying from that point of view, it would have been a lot easier for Mock to have waited to date Day until he quit being a caretaker. But sometimes life does not play out the way that we would logically hope it would. And that doesn't mean that it is necessarily bad or wrong. The other thing is, both Day and Mock are adults. So I'm like, both Day and Mock are capable of making their own decisions. And, that's kind of where I stand that deal. Now, I will say episode 11 was very hard for Anna. And episode 12, I'm guessing, is going to be very hard for Anna because the way the mom handles Mock and Day's relationship when she finds out in episode 11 is positively horrid. Now, I will say that I do agree with the mom that the timing is terrible, that it really was not good how things were handled. And she feels that Day was being taken advantage of because she was paying Mock to take care of him, and now they're boyfriends, and that she feels is wrong. Now, I understand some of her viewpoint, because if my kid had ended up dating a person who was a caretaker for them, I would be worried that perhaps that person could be trying to take advantage of them monetarily, and that they couldn't support them because they're being paid to be a caretaker by the mom in this case. So I do understand that valid point that she makes. I do understand that. However, what I do not understand from her point is sitting there and going, once Mock quits working as a caretaker, especially, and gets his own job, etc., she's like, Mock can never be with my son. Mock will never be able to provide for my son. Mock is somehow lower than my son, and my son must always be taken care of. I'm going, I'm not trying to be bad, but I'm going, your son is 22 years old. Your son, even though he's blind, can take care of himself and can eventually get his own job and way to provide for himself, and doesn't need a partner to financially provide for him. I'm like, and Mock has never once been incapable of taking care of himself. I'm like, when Mock got out of prison, he found a job. Mock has a house. Mock has a car. Yes, it's not as fancy as the house and cars that Day is used to, but I'm like, to sit there and go, Mock is incapable of taking care of anyone, and my son must be taken care of. I'm like, your son is 21, 22 years old. Your son may be blind, but last time I checked, he's not, incapable of taking care of himself, and could have a job if he so desired at some point. So, you need to find another excuse, because that one just doesn't hold water, lady. No offense, but I'm sitting there going, logically speaking, the bullet points do not match up for Anna on that deal. And logic's if I'm going, we live in 2024. Most people can really take care of themselves and are not needing to rely on other people to do so. And if they do need to rely on other people, they can be with someone they need that way. But I'm like, that's not the case for Day. I mean, So anyway, that was the thing that I really didn't like. Because I'm like, I do get her being concerned because she was worried that Mock might be dating Day to take advantage of him. I'm going, if anything, I'm sitting there going, I think in some ways Day could maybe take advantage of Mock's good nature in the relationship, but not the other way around, because Mock really works hard to make sure that he treats Day well. I think way, way more than most people would. And it's like one person wrote in the comments, they're like, if Day hadn't gone blind, he never would have even met Mock or given Mock a second look. And I was like, in a way, it was worth Day going blind for 2 years, because he does get his sight back in the end, to meet someone like Mock, because Mock will be a way better partner for Day than anyone that Day would have picked. I mean, if Day had ended up with August, who would have met his mother's approval and all that, August would have been a terrible partner. I mean, Arias would have ran Day through the mill. I'm like, no. So when we hit episode 11, I'm going to backtrack here a little bit. So Day and Mock go to Songkla for Day's friend's wedding, his running friend's wedding. Night was supposed to take Day to Songkla. I still think that was a little, that did not work out well. I think it could have worked out well if Night had still gone to Songkla and told his mom he was there. I mean, it wasn't entirely honest, but that way it wouldn't have caused the upset that it caused when his mom came back and found out that Night hadn't gone. It had just been Mock that had gone with Day. So Mock and Day go to the wedding. They go to a party on the beach, drink too much. That wasn't a good plan, but they do make it to the wedding. They also make it to the Last Twilight mountain that they have there. They also have a romantical moment, which is why you probably don't want the kiddies to see episode 10. And then they go back to Bangkok and have to deal with the fact that Day's mother is very unhappy. She takes away Day's phone. She changes the Wi-Fi password. She tells Night that she'd rather have Day locked in his room than going out with someone like Mock. and Mock quits working there. It's a mess. I mean, I totally get if you don't agree with who your children decide to love. I understand that. I'm like, you might not like the person that your son or daughter ends up with. But to sit there and change passwords, take away phones, I'm like, we're not dealing with 12-year-olds. We have an adult person here. And that is abusive behavior. I'm like, you do not take away people's phones. You certainly do not make it so they cannot leave the house. I'm like, that's not okay behavior. I'm going, this is so bad. I mean, everyone's talking about how Mock shouldn't be dating Day because he was a caretaker. I'm like, okay, but are we addressing the fact that Day's mother is being way worse in behavior than anything Mock has ever done? I'm like, this is personal rights issues. I'm like, you do not do this to people. So anyway, we are there now. However, Night did get a phone back to Day so that he can stay in touch with Mock. Mock and Day are still a couple, although they have to be very careful because his mom doesn't want him with them. And Night is arranging with Mock's friend when they can meet. And she's like, the visa expires at 7 tonight. You better be back because we do not want to have like World War III happen at our house. We've already had a war, but we don't want to have another one. They also have a time when they are together at Christmas time. And they're finally together as a family again after about 2 years of not having really good relations. Day forgives his brother for the car accident. And Day's mom, Day and Night's mom, kind of gives Night a bit of peace. She makes him his favorite beef stew and kind of reminds him that, she's still there and she still cares. Although that is debatable given how she parents. But anyway, we are now ready for episode 12, which I'm really looking forward to. Day gets a eye cornea replacement surgery and will be able to see again. We don't know how it will work out with Mock and him. I'm sure it works out fine, but I really could just say a few choice words to Day's mother. I don't feel that way about many people. I'm like, the heck are you doing? I'm like, how about we lock you in a room and take away your phone and Wi-Fi and see how you feel? I'm just saying, turnabout fair play. So anyway, but that is my review of Last Twilight. I would give the show an absolute 10 out of 10. Now, I will say there are some scenes you cannot watch with the kids in episode 10, and there are some hard parts. The other thing I don't like is Day's character is extremely naggy. So if naggy people kind of bother you in film, then this might not be the series for you. But I really do like it because both Jimmy and C as actors did a phenomenal job. It's like everyone keeps saying in the house, they're like, they're just so good at acting and really putting themselves into the characters' roles emotionally. And I'm going, that is so true. The only thing I feel bad is I'm like, the actor named Jimmy is really thin in this show. I'm like, he needs muffins or something. I mean, no offense. I'm like, you're way too skinny. I'm like, maybe a brownie. I don't know, protein, something to make you so the wind doesn't blow you over. Anna, I'm like, I want to feed people. I'm like, I'm all for being healthy, but I'm like, you're way too skinny. So that is my review of Last Twilight. You can view this on YouTube for free. It has English subtitles. Check it at the round table. Bye.